Hello, welcome to day of reading through the Bible. I'm Toni Henderson-Mayers. I'll be your reader. I'm known as an actor, a director, producer, professor, but most important, I'm a child of God. And I'm also known as an entrepreneur too, as well. If you want to know more about me, join my Toni Henderson-Mayers YouTube channel. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe and ring the notification bell for that channel and this one so you'll know every time I upload a new video. So, you ready to read God's word? Let's go. All right, we are going to read Esther 1 through 5. Not feeling well. I am tired as all get out, but we are pressing ahead. But Esther is such a good book, so let's into it. Esther 1 through 5. Let's read. Queen Vashti disposed. This is what happened during the time of exorcies. The Xerxes, who ruled over 127 provinces stretching from India to Kush. At that time, King Xerxes reigned from his royal throne in the citadel of Susa. And in the third year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all his nobles and officials, the military leaders of Persia and Media. The princes and the nobles of the provinces were present. For a full 180 days, he displayed the vast wealth of his kingdom and the splendor and glory of his majesty. When these days were over, the king gave a banquet lasting 7 days in the enclosed garden of the king's palace for all the people from the least to the greatest who were in the citadel of Susa. The garden had hangings of white and blue linen, fastened with cords of white linen and purple material to silver rings on marble pillars. There were couches of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of porphyry, marble, mother of pearl, and other costly stones. Wine was served in goblets of gold, each one different from the other, and the royal wine was abundant in keeping with the king's liberality. By the king's command, each guest was allowed to drink with no restrictions, for the king instructed all the wine stewards to serve each man what he wished. Queen Vashti also gave a banquet for the women in the royal palace of King Xerxes. On the seventh day, when King Xerxes was in high spirits from wine, he commanded the 7 eunuchs who served him, Mehuman, Mistha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abatha, 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 Zethar, and Carcass, to bring before him Queen Vashti, wearing her royal crown in order to display her beauty to the people and nobles, for she was lovely to look at. But when the attendants delivered the king's command, Queen Vashti refused to come. Then the king became furious and burned with anger. Since it was customary for the king to consult experts in matters of law and justice, he spoke with the wise men who understood the times and were closest to the king, Karshina, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marcina, and Memucan, the 7 nobles of Persia and Media, who had special access to the king and were highest in the kingdom. According to the law, what must be done to Queen Vashti? He asked. She has not obeyed the command of King Xerxes that the eunuchs have taken to her. When Memucan replied to the presence of the king and the nobles, Queen Vashti has done wrong, not only against the king, but also against all the nobles and the peoples of the provinces of King Xerxes. For the queen's conduct will become known to all the women, and so they will despise their husbands and say, King Xerxes commanded Queen Vashti to be brought before him, but she would not come. This very day, the Persians and Median women of the nobility who have heard about the queen's conduct will respond to all the king's nobles in the same way. There will be no end of disrespect and discord. Therefore, if it pleases the king, let him issue a royal decree and let it be written in the laws of Persia and Media, which cannot be repealed, that Vashti is never again to enter the presence of King Xerxes. Also, let the king give her royal position to someone else who is better than she. Then, when the king edict is proclaimed throughout all his vast realm, all the women will respect their husbands, from the least to the greatest. The king and his nobles were pleased with this advice, so the king did as Mimicon proposed. He sent dispatches to all parts of the kingdom, to each province in its own script, and to each people in their own language, proclaiming that every man should be ruler over his own household using his native tongue. Child, please. Chapter 2. Esther made queen. Later, when King Xerxes' fury had subsided, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what he had decreed about her. Then the king, personal attendants proposed, let a search be made for beautiful young virgins for the king. Let the king appoint commissioners in every province of his realm to bring all these beautiful young women into the harem of the citadel of Susa. Let them be placed under the care of Hegai, the king's eunuch, who is in charge of the women. You need a eunuch for that. And let beauty treatments be given to them. Then let the young woman who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti. This advice appealed to the king, and he followed it. Now there was in the citadel of Susa a Jew of the tribe of Benjamin named Mordecai, son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, who had been carried into exile from Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. Among those taken captive was Jehoiachin, king of Judah. Mordecai had a cousin named Hadassah, whom he had brought up because she had neither father nor mother. This young woman, who was also known as Esther, had a lovely figure and was beautiful. Mordecai had taken her as his own daughter when her father and mother died. When the king's order and edict had been proclaimed, many young women were brought to the citadel of Susa and put under the care of Hegai. Esther also was taken to the king's palace and entrusted to Hegai, who had charge of the harem. She pleased him and won his favor. Immediately, he provided her with her beauty treatments and special food. I wonder what the beauty treatments was. We know the special food, no food. He assigned to her 7 female attendants, selected from the king's palace, and moved her and her attendants into the best place in the harem. Esther had not revealed her nationality and family background. Was she passing? Mm. Because Mordecai had forbidden her to do so. Every day he walked back and forth near the courtyard of the harem to find out how Esther was and what was happening to her. Before a young woman's turn came to go into King Xerxes, she had to complete 12 months of beauty treatments prescribed for the women. Well, you don't want nobody ugly, huh? My goodness, 12 months. I think anybody will look beautiful by then. Okay, 6 months with oil of myrrh and six of the perfumes and cosmetics. And this is how she would go to the king. Anything she wanted was given to her to take with her from the harem to the king's palace. In the evening, She would go there and in the morning return to another part of the harem to the care of Shashgaz, the king's eunuch who was in charge of the concubines. She would not return to the king unless he was pleased with her and summoned her by name. When the turn came for Esther, the young woman Mordecai had adopted, the daughter of his uncle Ahiahil, Abihail, to go to the king, she asked for nothing other than what Hegai, the king's eunuch who was in charge of the harem, suggested, and Esther won the favor of everyone who saw her. She was taken to King Xerxes in the royal residence in the 10th month, the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. Now the king was attracted to Esther more than to any of the other women, and she won his favor and approval more than any of the other virgins. So he set a royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. And the king gave a great banquet, Esther's banquet for all his nobles and officials. He proclaimed a holiday throughout the provinces and distributed gifts with royal liberality. Mordecai uncovers a conspiracy. Mhm. When the virgins were assembled as a second time, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. But Esther had kept secret her family background and nationality, just as Mordecai had told her to do so. For she continued to follow Mordecai in instructions as he had done when he was bringing her up. During the time Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, Bigthana, and Teresh, two of the king's officers who guarded the doorway, became angry and conspired to assassinate King Xerxes. But Mordecai found out about the plot and told Queen Esther, who in turn reported it to the king, giving credit to Mordecai. And when the report was investigated and found to be true, the two officials were impaled on poles. All this was recorded in the book of the Annals in the presence of the king. Chapter 3. Haman's plot to destroy the Jews. After these events, King Xerxes honored Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, elevating him and giving him a seat of honor higher than that of all the other nobles. All the royal officials at the king's gate knelt down and paid honor to Haman, for the king had commanded this concerning him. But Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor. Then the royal officials at the king's gate asked Mordecai, "Why do you disobey the king's command?" Day after day they spoke to him, but he refused to comply. Therefore they told Haman about it to see whether Mordecai's behavior would be tolerated, for he had told them he was a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor, he was enraged. Yet, having learned who Mordecai's people were, he scorned the idea of killing only Mordecai. Instead of Haman, looked for a way to destroy all Mordecai's people, the Jews, throughout the whole kingdom of Xerxes. In the 12th year of King Xerxes, in the first month, the month of Nisan, the that is the lot, was cast in the presence of Haman to select a day and month. And the lot fell on the 12th month, the month of Adar. Then Haman said to King Xerxes, there is a certain people dispersed among the people in all the provinces of your kingdom who keep themselves separate. Their customs are different from those of all other people, and they do not obey the king's law. It is not in the king's best interest to tolerate them. If it pleases the king, a decree be issued to destroy them, and I will give 10,000 talents of silver to the king's administrators for the royal treasury. So the king took his signet ring from his finger and gave it to Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. Keep the money, the king said to Haman, and do with the people as you please. Then on the 13th day of the first month, the royal secretaries were summoned. They wrote out in the script of each province and in the language of each people of Haman's orders to the king's satraps, the governors of the various provinces, and the nobles of the various peoples. These were written in the name of King Xerxes himself and sealed with his own ring. Dispatches were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces with the orders to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jews, young and old, women and children, on a single day, on the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, and to plunder their goods. A copy of the text of the edict was to be issued as law in every province, nationality, so that they would be ready for that day. The couriers went out, spurred on by the king's command, and the edict was issued to the citadel of Susa. The king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Susa was bewildered. Chapter 4. Mordecai persuades Esther to help. When Mordecai learned of all that had been done, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the city wailing loudly and bitterly. But he went only as far as the king's gate, because no one clothed in sackcloth was allowed to enter it. In every province to which the edict and order of the king came, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and wailing. Many lay in sackcloth and ashes. When Esther's eunuchs and female attendants came and told her about Mordecai, she was in great distress. She sent clothes for him to put on instead of his sackcloth, but he would not accept them. Then Esther summoned Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs assigned to attend her, and ordered him to find out what was troubling Mordecai and why. So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gate. Mordecai told him everything that had happened to him, including the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. He also gave him a copy of the text of the edict for their annihilation, which had been published in Susa, to show to Esther and explain it to her. And he told him to instruct her to go into the king's presence to beg for mercy and plead with him for her people. Hathach went back and reported to Esther what Mordecai had said. Then she instructed him to say to Mordecai, all the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that they may be put to death unless the king extends the gold scepter to them and spares their lives. But 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king. When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer: do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But you and your family, and you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. When Esther sent this reply, then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai: go gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, And if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went away and carried out all of Esther's instructions. Chapter 5. It's our last chapter reading for today. Esther's request to the king. On the third day, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the palace in front of the king's hall. The king was sitting on his royal throne in the hall facing the entrance. When he saw Queen Esther standing in the court, he was pleased with her and held out to her the gold scepter that was in his hand. So Esther approached and touched the tip of the scepter. Then the king asked, "What is it, Queen Esther? What is your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be given to you." He loved him some Esther, chat. "If it pleases the king," replied Esther, "let the king, together with Haman, come today to a banquet I have prepared for him." "Bring Haman at once," the king said, "so that we may do what Esther asked." So the king and Haman went to the banquet Esther had prepared. As they were drinking wine, the king again asked Esther, "Now what is your petition? It will be given you. And what is your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be granted." Esther replied, "My petition and my request is this. If the king regards me with favor, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and fulfill my request, let the king and Haman come tomorrow to the banquet. I will prepare for them. Then I will answer the king's question." Haman's rage against Mordecai. Haman went out that day happy and in high spirits. But when he saw Mordecai at the king's gate and observed that he neither rose nor showed fear in his presence, he was filled with rage against Mordecai. Nevertheless, Haman restrained himself and went home. Calling together his friends and Zeresh, his wife, Haman boasted to them about his vast wealth, his many sons, and all the ways the king had honored him, and how he had elevated him above the other nobles and officials. And that's not all, Haman added. "I'm the only person Queen Esther invited to accompany the king to the banquet she gave. And she has invited me along with the king tomorrow. But all this gives me no satisfaction, as I long to see that Jew Mordecai sitting at the king's gate." His wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him, "Have a pole set up reaching up to a height of 50 cubits, and ask the king in the morning to have Mordecai impaled on it. Then go with the king to the banquet and enjoy yourself." This suggestion delighted Haman, and he had the pole set up. May the Lord add a blessing to the reading and the hearing of his holy word. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you know every time I upload a new video. Wow, the book of Esther is just so good. And I was ready to read some more. And I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted and I'm tired. And I was still ready to read more. So the book of Esther is in the historical books of the Bible. We do not know who the author is, but it is written for the Jewish people, and it was written sometime after 460 BC. Now, the theme of this whole book is that God providentially positions Esther and Mordecai to bring the Jews of Persia deliverance from their enemies. And that's so important to know, because sometimes we think that when we're elevated or we receive something in our lives, that it's just for us and us alone. But this is showing us that when the Lord blesses us, we don't know how many other people are being blessed through us, and that he may have rose us up, as Mordecai said, for such a time as this. And you have to think about, what has the Lord elevated you to? Why are you there at a certain time, a certain place? You may be saving someone. You may be giving value to someone. You may be taking someone to another level, or even just witnessing about Christ. Okay. So the book of Esther Starts off with Queen Vashti, who is beautiful. Okay. And Queen Vashti, King Xerxes, he gives this party. He has all these people there. He's got, wine flowing as much as you can drink. Um, he displays his wealth for 180 days. He gives this banquet, I believe was like was it a 7 day banquet, I believe? Yeah, 7 days, lasting 7 days. Can you believe that? Child, I can barely feed folk for several hours instead of several days. So then this whole scene with Queen Esther, he wanted to show her beauty off. And you know what? Anyway, I could see Queen Esther's, I could see what she was saying. So now you don't feel like all that, okay? But and then men is drinking and they drunk. But this just goes to show that there were different customs and women only had certain amount of rights, et cetera, et cetera. And we have to learn how to operate within the culture and what, even to this day, you have to know how to, we got a lot better freedoms here in America, but there's women who are living in other countries who don't. And somehow we learn, even in the US, how to maneuver, around the cultures and try to survive. But she doesn't come to the banquet so that she could be shown off. So the king is embarrassed more than anything, and he didn't like it. And so they come up with can't remember the guy's name, Maramoth, I think his name is, but he comes up with a way to kind of pay her back, demote her, and bring some other woman in place. So when we get into chapter 2, we get a beauty pageant going on. I think the first beauty pageant in the world are recorded in the Bible is with Queen Esther. So, of course, Queen Esther is an adopted child, pretty much, of Mordecai. He takes her on after, I believe, his brother passes, and the wife and the mother of her passes on as well. And she was quite beautiful. They said she had a beautiful figure, how we all start out in life. Until but anyway, she was very beautiful, and honey, they went through all these doggone beauty treatments. I said a 12-month beauty treatment and special food. Okay, you know what that special food was, right? Fruits and vegetables and some nuts, honey. Everybody would be thin with that diet plan, right? But anyway, they went through beauty treatments and all this. The eunuchs were in charge of them so that they could get ready to be presented before the king. And so the king was very pleased with Esther. He really, really liked her. And so she was made the queen in chapter 2. Okay. And then, of course, there was a conspiracy. One, because Queen Esther was of a different nationality. All right. So, nationalities weren't really a big thing, except for when it came to something like Jews and Gentiles per se. But you would see people vacillate throughout the body who were what we call black, but they didn't call people black or white in there. They also just went according to their nationalities. If you were a Cushite or you were a person, a Philistine, and you could have been just like being an American, right? You could have been any color up under that country, just wherever you were actually from. And there was no probably no schisms pretty much in that. But in this particular situation, Haman didn't like one person. So because he didn't like one person who happened to be a Jew, he spread that hate to a whole group. Okay, and that can be, let me just speak to somebody right now. Somebody may be watching this and you don't like a whole group of people because of a bad situation you were in, but that is not of God to hate a whole group of people because of one situation. We're not supposed to hate at all. We're supposed to find a way to get along with each other, and if we can't, we just go ahead and forgive and we pray and we move on. But we're not supposed to be hating each other like that. But his hate spread it to all people, all Jewish people, to the point that Haman wanted all of them annihilated. He wanted to get rid of every last one of them because he had an attitude problem with Mordecai. He was mad because Mordecai would not bow, okay, before him and all of this kind of stuff. I mean, come on now. He didn't do it because he was a Jew. That was against their religion. And this is something that we have to learn that don't take everything so personal, right? We got to respect other people's values and mores, etc., etc. Okay, so anyway, okay, yeah. So he did not know about Queen Esther's background, which goes to show she did not look where she can't look like where she came from. Some of us look like where we come from. Some of us look like whatever nationality. My nationality is American, but then of course here in America we split up by color, right? But if I go to another country, they're gonna be thinking American. That's what they're gonna be thinking. You're not gonna be thinking anything else. And that's because when I open my mouth or whatever, or clothes I wear, or whatever, it gives it away, right? Because there's some countries that I can go to and blend. And as long as I don't say anything, they won't know. Now, I've been to Africa. I don't blend as well as you think. Okay. I'm a little lighter. That's one thing. But I could blend if I don't say much or if I'm in certain areas, right? Certain places. But it's the same thing like if I went to Dominican Republic, or Panama, I could blend as long as I don't open my mouth. If I'm speaking Spanish like they are, they probably won't pick it up. But if I talk in my regular American accent, they're like, ah, you are from America. So evidently Esther, her speech, and of course they dressed her and all that, but also the way she looked, she just did not present as someone who was Jewish, okay? And she, in order to save Mordecai, went into sackcloth and ashes, honey. He didn't have no clothes on. He done ripped his clothes off and everything because he was mourning. And Esther wanted to find out. So by messenger, they find out. And she's like, wait a minute. I can't go before the king because, and see, these are other things. These are other things that sometimes women were bound by. Not only just her being a woman, but just royalty and common people, etc. But she could not go before the king unless she was sent for. And if she did go before him, if he didn't put that scepter out there, honey, she's gonna be a dead duck. So she was well aware of that. But because she knew after Mordecai explained to her how important it was, and they had a beautiful relationship, she trusted him implicitly because he was good to her. He raised her, he took care of her. She trusted him, she had faith in him, and they had a great communication. So much you can learn in the book of Esther, so much you can learn, right? And it also shows that God can use anything, even our beauty, even our wonderful figure. He can use that to soften the heart of the king. Okay. I don't think women really, I mean, it was their tradition, so they kind of got used to it. And I guess with the luxuries and stuff, I guess you'd be okay. But no woman really, really wants to be part of a bunch of wives and a bunch of concubines. It's not our first choice. Okay. Some things in our lives, we just have to kind of go with the flow because that's the way things are in the society that we come up in. But God was able to use her beauty to save the lives of the Jewish people. So you ain't just cute, y'all, just to be cute. But God may be using that beauty and that wonderful figure to melt the heart of someone who will listen when you need them to listen. Okay, so she made her request to the king, and she did it in a strategic way, honey. I always say, when I teach women or wives or women who want to be wives, but women who are young wives, when I train them, I say, you got to ask your husband something, honey. Go fix something nice to eat that he like. Let him get comfortable on the couch. You might even rub his feet, and then you just slip it right on in there. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And I see Esther she was right on point with the strategy. Okay. A strategy that women learn well, honey, before you start requesting anything from the king. But of course, she hasn't revealed it completely yet. We're still in a setup. So you need to join us tomorrow. I believe we're going to pick up with it. Let me just see real quick. I believe we're going to pick up on Esther. Yep, we're going to continue till we finish Esther. So yeah, absolutely. I think I just made this too small, but we'll get back to it later. So yeah, I'm so excited to go through Esther even further. It is getting dramatic. It ends with Haman putting up a pole because he's ready to, he's going to impale Mordecai on this pole. He hates him so much, he's going to have him killed. Okay. That is where we left off. So make sure you visit me on my website, which is www.tonihendersonmayers.com. And just know that the word of God, and we're getting toward the end, and I'm so glad you're hanging in there with us. Just know that the word of God is a lamp unto our feet, it is a light unto our path. We will hide God's word in our hearts that we may not sin against God. You take care, and I will see you tomorrow, God willing. Bye. Hey there, thank you so much for checking out my video, and I want you to check out my website at tonihendersonmayers.com. You can find out about me in film and stage. You can also find out about the wise courtship philosophy and everything that that I do, speaking across the country, and the book that I've written. And of course, you can go on to my online store where you can learn a lot of information about business, get coaching sessions, online courses, and so much more. Not only that, I have an Etsy store, which the website of all of these things are in my description. So make sure you go to my Etsy shop, which is called Faith, Hope, and Love Center. Make sure you go to that so you can get t-shirts, and I'm adding things every day, t-shirts, mugs, masks, all types of things, into the link that's going to take you to all of the books that we're using pretty much in our Read Through the Bible series. So here are the journals. This reflection journal is so that you can write and take notes. This one has a lot of study information and will help you keep organized as you're studying the Bible. This is the Bible that I read from, the NIV Study Bible. Of course, Wise Courtship is here, and some of the other books that I wrote, Yes, God is Real, and also I Rise, Stories of Triumph. It's just a great encouragement tool. So walk on over to the stores and give us some support. I think you're going to be blessed by the products. Take care.